All right. Hello and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series and Podcast. I'm Stacey Roman and I will be moderating this discussion today. Very pleased to have Todd Bensman, a writing fellow here at the Middle East Forum and a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies and author, join us to discuss Muslim migrants flood the southern U.S. border. Mr. Bensman will speak for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I'll turn the discussion over to Mr. Todd Bensman.
Okay, hi. Thank you for hosting this talk, and I do appreciate being here and being associated with MEF. I thought I'd get started with the fact that the Biden administration in about April of 2022 decided to post on its enforcement statistics website at the cbp.gov suspected terrorist crossings of the southern border. Remember that for many years, this issue of, are terrorists crossing the border? How would they get there? Has been a subject of great contention. The partisan divide generally moved along the lines of liberals would say that's just absurd. There are no terrorists crossing at all. That's a made up Republican fear-mongering talking point. And Republicans on the other side would very often, kind of go overboard, say, the terrorists are crossing, and there would be, training camps in Mexico and a whole variety of stories that were always very difficult to verify. But the truth is really that there is a threat issue that has been addressed by the U.S. government and the Homeland Security enterprise about this for many, many years, since 9/11. And it often doesn't look like either one of those narratives. And so I thought that when the Biden administration decided, for still unknown reasons, to start posting monthly statistics of KST, known or suspected terrorist crossings, that maybe we had moved the debate, we'd made some progress as a civilization, because it's now no longer a point of contention that at least suspected terrorists who have made the FBI's TSDB terrorist screening center watch lists are crossing that border and have been apprehended. So I thought I'd start this talk with just these sort of nonpartisan statistics that are being posted by the Biden administration at cbp.gov at their enforcement page. You can go there yourself and sort of scroll through them, but I'll just give you the sense. There are about 5 years of statistics on that site that they provide that are crossings and apprehensions of crossers between ports of entry are the ones that we focus on, that I like to focus on, because if you're crossing between a port of entry, that means you're pretty much trying to sneak in. You do not have permission to be in the country. And that's a higher level of concern than folks that might show up at the port of entry and self-present and claim asylum. Typically in a year, before the current mass migration crisis, where we're at about 5.5 million apprehensions and gotaways, people that have run and gotten into the interior, maybe even higher than that, 6 million in just 24 months. We are in the midst of a historic mass migration crisis. We have never seen numbers like this, not even close. 2.4 million apprehensions in 2022. Already in the first 4 months of fiscal 2023, we've had over 1 million. And typically in any given year in the past, it might be 300,000, 400,000. Rarely ever did it hit 500,000. We're already at 1 million in 4 months in. I mean, so we are in the midst of something that is truly beyond the American experience by far. which is the reason why I've written a book about it called Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the greatest border crisis in U.S. history. And I think it's probably in world history. But in the mix of that is this threat issue, where we have seen higher numbers of people from Muslim majority countries and really from all over the world crossing into the United States than we've ever seen before, and especially those who are on the TSDB watch list. We typically would have maybe 20 in a year that got caught on both the Mexican side and on the US side. The numbers now, since 2021, when the crisis began, or that we had 98 in just fiscal year 2022, which is, 4 times the number that conducted the 9/11 terrorist attacks. If you want to think that that's a low number, I think people that work in Homeland Security and the enterprise regard that as a real problem. That many were actually apprehended in one fiscal year. And also, according to the government statistics at cbp.gov, so far in the fiscal year of 2023, we have seen 69 who have been on the watch list. And so we are on track to beat 2022's number in terms of terror watch listed migrants that are entering the country that are being apprehended. I want to just point out one thing that people on the liberal side of the divide will look at this and say, well, you caught them all. What are you so worried about? These are captured people on the watch list, thank God. And yeah, thank God. But the context for that is that we've had at least 1.5 million immigrants cross the border who have gotten away from Border Patrol into the American interior, where the official policy is to not apprehend and deport anyone. The interior of the United States has been a deportation-free zone for 24 months. So if you can get past the 100-mile Border Patrol zone into the interior, you're home free. And so while we may have caught 150, 160, 170 people on the watch list, the probability is very high that many more got through into the interior. I want to say that the statistics tell us very little about who these immigrants are, but there is some information that has been teased out, that has been sussed out in small dribs and drabs about some of them. I write about some of these migrants in my book, Overrun, in a chapter called Terrorists in the Wire. That book is Overrun. It's one of the chapters, but it's really kind of an update to my first book, which is America's Covert Border War. This book is all about the migration of people from Muslim majority countries and what the United States does about it. A quick word about that. Typically, in a normal time when you don't have a mass migration crisis, when one of these people is apprehended who flags on the watch list, the FBI will typically go down and conduct interviews face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and conduct security background checks and do some investigative work to kind of figure out who they are and what they're about. And typically, they will then be deported to their home country if that's possible, or to a third country if we have an agreement with them. That is part of the covert border war that I describe in my book, America's Covert Border War. But in a crisis like this, we are seeing signs that covert border war is faltering and has gone off the rails. And I want to talk to you about 3 or 4 of these cases really quickly. They are from the book. They're discussed at greater length in the book, so you can read more about them there. But the first case I'd like to bring to your attention is of a Lebanese-born Venezuelan named Issam Bazi. Bazi crossed the Rio Grande in December of 2021 at the height of up to that point. It wasn't even, now we're at the height. Every month is a new height. But at that point, I think we hit 200,000 apprehensions in a single month. And Venezuelans were crossing in huge numbers. And Issam Bazi flagged on the terror watch list. I want to just give you a quick, the documents related to this case were leaked because somebody involved in it was so angry about what happened. And I have those documents. So what I'm telling you is based on internal government documents, confidential but not classified. Issam Bazi crosses, he flags, the FBI comes down, they interview him, and they determine that he is a high risk, national security risk, deeply involved in terrorist activities. It doesn't say which group, but this is probably Hezbollah because of, he's a Lebanese and he's in Venezuela. And he's going to be connected to where Iran and Hezbollah have been very active for many years. The FBI recommended, in line with their protocols, that he be detained and that he probably be deported after the FBI is finished with them. But in this case, ICE headquarters intervened forcefully, overruled the FBI, and ordered him released on grounds that he was at risk of catching COVID. He's an overweight guy. It's all in the documentation. And because he was overweight, he might be considered at risk. So he was released to the Detroit area, where the last I heard he was pursuing an asylum claim. He didn't get picked up even after I reported it, but this case was only reported by me. So I guess it's, I don't know if anybody's listening to me out there, but he's still out there as far as I'm aware. The second case, just give you an idea of who some of these people are, involves a Yemeni by the name of Ahmed Mohammed Ahmed. This also is based on leaked documents to me. Ahmed was crossing through Mexico. He'd gotten to the northern border, was about to cross into Eagle Pass, Texas, when the Mexicans picked him up, ran the database the Americans give access to, and he's watch listed. So the FBI goes into the Mexican detention centers. This is all, again, this whole thing is detailed in America's Covert Border War, because this is allowed to happen in Mexico. And he is deported to Yemen. But the Mexican authorities, the intelligence officers that are transporting him, depart in Europe at the transit airport and return back to Mexico. And he is able to somehow not finish the trip, and he comes back to Mexico. And the Mexicans catch him again in the same area, Piedras Negras, about to cross into Eagle Pass. This time, though, the system doesn't work. There's apparently the Americans do not come. Ahmed is flushed from the detention center and released with everybody else at some point, and we don't know what became of him. The reason I know this story is because the BOLO, the Be Out on the Lookout For, was leaked to me, and the whole story is described in there. A BOLO went out to Border Patrol in the Eagle Pass in the Del Rio sector to be on the lookout for this terror watch listed Yemeni. He was listed as a CBP Category 5, which is a terrorist organization affiliate, a member of a terrorist organization. Doesn't say which one. And so we don't know what happened to him. A third case I'll talk to you about is, looks like he was a Colombian. This one was reported by Fox News, by the name of Isnardo Garcia Amado. He crosses in the flush and the influx of crisis, and is released before anybody can check his fingerprints or run his security or anything about it, about who he is. and disappears. And later somebody checks the fingerprint and finds a match to the TSDB. This sets off a feverish nationwide manhunt to figure out where he is. HSI picks him up in Florida and, thank God, brings him back. I don't know much about Garcia or Amado. It could be that he is a member of FARC, the guerrilla organization in Colombia. We have had a number of FARC operatives. They're not Islamics, but we absolutely do not want FARC, guerrilla-trained FARC members with probably blood on their hands coming over the southern border any more than we want Islamics. But the broader point here is that the system appears to be faltering under this mass migration crisis, the covert border war. And so therefore the threat level, in my opinion, is much higher than it's ever been right now with all of those gotaways. Finally, I want to talk to you about, there is a prosecution out of Ohio of an Iraqi former member of Al-Qaeda who got in several years ago as an asylum seeker. He flew in, that one, but his arrest and indictment, his name is Shihab Ahmed Shihab. 3 Shihabs in that name, but the indictment and the complaint describe his plot to import up to 4 Al-Qaeda, ISIS operatives from Qatar and also from Iraq over the southern border to assassinate President George Bush, former President George Bush, in Texas. And according to the court records, he had already brought in 2 members of Hezbollah. And so there's a lot of mystery still shrouded on that case, around that case. But again, what it shows us, and thank God they caught him, but what it shows us again is that the bad guys are well aware of what is happening at our southern border, that it is vulnerable to this kind of penetration and infiltration. So many of the, probably more than in the history of our country, the greatest percentages are reaching the border from other countries other than Mexico and Central America, from 150 different countries. They represent every country of the Middle East, Islamic countries of Northern Africa and South Asia, Pakistan, all the STAN countries. I've met them. There are so many coming in that an organization out of San Diego called the Latina Muslim Association of San Diego opened up a Muslim-only shelter in Tijuana in May of 2022 because demand for its services were deemed so sufficient that they needed to have an organization. And I went to visit this organization. I want to tell you, I was in Tijuana in November and in and around this shelter. And let me share my screen real quickly. I'll let the video run, but I won't play sound. I'll just let you as I speak. So this organization, there it is right there. You can see it is 2 blocks from the wall. I spent the first couple of days around it interviewing Chechens, guys that were coming in from Chechnya. It's got a mosque inside. It's halal food provided, and separate facilities for men and women. And these are sort of provisions that were seen as not being provided by other shelters in Tijuana. So the issue here is that the founders of this outfit tell me that when I interviewed the director, that they receive immigrants in this facility from all over the Islamic world, they're coming in and being provided with the ability to cross, to get humanitarian parole and to be crossed pre-legalized through the ports of entry under this new Biden administration policy that we are told only applies to Cubans, Nicaraguans, Haitians, and Venezuelans. But the reality is that they're allowing really people from all of the Muslim countries to come through as well. And the big selling point here is that they conduct full security backgrounds. However, lots of Somalis are coming through, and you can't do backgrounders on Somalis. Syrians are coming through. You can't do background checks very well on Syrians. Lots and lots of Afghans are coming through. We can't really do backgrounds on Afghans. And from a lot of the countries, Mauritania, Uzbekistan, Russia, the Chechens coming in, Russia's not doing background checks for us, I guarantee you. That right there is the woman who is the director. And I asked her point blank, have the Americans, the Biden administration, intelligence community ever reached out to ask you about the people that you're bringing through? And the answer was no. I have never been contacted. I would be, you can see what she's saying here. I would be very happy to help the Americans if anybody were to ever ask me for help, but I've never been asked. That tells me that the covert border war is faltering, is falling apart, that they're not all over this thing, doing everything they possibly can. She told me, to her credit, that she has reported several cases of Islamic terrorists or extremism to the Mexican authorities, who did do some due diligence when she asked, and they removed them from her facility. And with that, I can just sort of yield the floor to questions. Let me stop the share here, and you can find this video at cis.org. We published this in November, or my website at toddbensman.com. You can find it on the front page there as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for speaking on that, Steve. Steve Munson.
Hope I didn't go over my time.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. So the first question is from David Levine, asking, while he was president, Donald Trump was able to keep Muslim terrorists from crossing. Exactly what did he do differently that was so effective?
Well, I think this is about sort of reducing the haystack. What Donald Trump did was he had policies in place that reduced the number of people crossing into the country. It deterred to about 30,000 a month, which may sound high, but not when you consider that we're having 250,000 a month cross now, and from all over the country. Some of those policies had to do with the COVID pandemic, Title 42, which was this automatic pushback of everybody who crossed. He was pushing back about 87% when he handed the border over to Biden, but also remain in Mexico, where everybody would have to get pushed back to wait for their asylum claims in Mexico, which nobody wanted to do, so they didn't bother coming. Things like third country transit, where you couldn't apply for asylum if you'd passed through several other countries that were already deemed safe. And people didn't want to bother coming over from the Middle East. I mean, they did, some of them did anyway, but when you have a haystack that is much smaller, your infrastructure for Homeland Security is much better able to catch and process suspected terrorists. That's not happening now at all. All of those processes the aperture has been widened to the maximum for as many people as possible to cross over the southern border. Hope that answers that.
Yes, thank you. An anonymous attendee asked, with 2 more years of this administration, is it too late to stop the infiltration of terrorists? And Robert Larrick follows up, how do we get a better handle on these problems?
Well, unfortunately, the levers of power over the whether the gate is opened or shut lead directly to the White House. There's very little that states can do when the federal government decides to open the gate wide. And so we were kind of looking, some of us that are concerned about this, were kind of looking to the midterms to cut the Democratic Party deeply to where they lose enough blood that they might want to reverse course on some of these policies and close the gate back up. But it didn't happen. And so unfortunately, it looks like the administration plans to continue with these policies for another 2 years for the balance of its term, and then there'll be another election. And I forget what the other question was.
Oh, sorry. And how do we get a better handle on these problems?
Well, again, you have to have policies. Listen, so I've spent a lot of time with the immigrants, and my book Overrun really incorporates a lot of primary sourcing, which is the immigrants. So, why are you coming? Why are you coming now? The answer is always that I'm not going to drop $10,000 in smuggling fees if I'm just going to end up stuck in Mexico. And it's kind of that simple. It's a calculus of odds. You're gambling with smuggling fortunes for a lot of these people. $5,000, $10,000 is borrowed, begged from family and relatives, and you want to make sure you're going to get in and stay in to pay back multiples of whatever you borrowed. And certainly you don't want to end up in debt and nothing to show. So the policies that would be needed to be put in place would be to reduce the odds of your success so that you don't want to even bother spending the money. You're going to stay home. But those policies are not, the exact opposite is in place now, where you are almost guaranteed entry and stay into the United States under these policies. So until we reduce the odds of enter and stay, we're not going to get a grip on any of this.
Thank you. And what exactly would be your recommendations, and what is the likelihood of those being taken into account and the change coming?
Well, for one thing, there's always a lot of talk about we need comprehensive immigration reform. And I take the position in the book and in public that we don't really need comprehensive immigration reform. Our immigration system is great for the border. It's well suited to deter and defend and deport and detain. But and the laws are all in place. The problem is that this administration chose to decouple itself completely from enforcing any of those laws. And the administration has decided that it is going to make up its own rules and systems as it goes along. And because we have a divided Congress, it's now left up to courts and litigation. So, we just have to kind of hope that some of the courts, rule against what the administration is doing to reduce that haystack. And that's ultimately what it's about, that you have to just simply abide by the law. If an administration abides by the law, it should deter the vast majority of this. There are a couple of fixes. The asylum law has a massive loophole in it that provides an escape route around the law. But that's a legislative fix. That's one of the few legislative fixes. And there's a couple of others. The last chapter of the book, I recommend, I have 4 major recommendations, but other than that, follow the law.
All right. Well, thank you so much. As we're nearing the end, can you tell our viewers where we can purchase your book? I did put the Amazon link in the chat for everyone, or where we can find some more of your work.
Yeah, thank you. So the book is, it's out in bookstores. It's published by Post Hill Bombardier Books. So you should be able to find it in your local bookstore, but lots of people buy online. And so it's available everywhere books are sold online. And there's a hardcover version, there's a soft cover, and there's Kindle. And You can find my work if you go to toddbensman.com. I write for a lot of different publications. And so you wouldn't be able to follow me very closely unless you go to my website. I do have a newsletter where when I publish something new, it's free. Don't worry about it. You can unsubscribe. I'll send a notice out. You can find that newsletter link at my site, toddbensman.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We've come to the close of our webinar and podcast. Thank you again, Mr. Bensman, for speaking with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And for our viewers, please join us Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern for an update with Ashley Perry. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.